All right, guys, this is Greg Collins, church debater and preacher Mike. Mike, how you doing?
Toast the new year, man, with a good bang drink.
Yes, I like
Hey.
those. My son introduced me to Mountain Dew, something watermelon flavored. And I actually
Ooh,
like watermelon flavor more than I
I do
like
too.
watermelon.
Oh,
So
okay. Well, I like watermelon
I
flavors,
liked the
man.
drink. It was really good. Magic
Ah,
melon or major melon or something like that. So you'll have to try that. It's not an energy drink, but it
yeah.
was pretty good. But anyway, guys, this will be the first live interview we've done since the holidays. So
Mm-hmm. Yep.
various different schedules going on. If you missed it, we had a good video last week where Mike and Austin, his son, who are both preachers now at different congregations, they had a really good discussion. I don't want to even describe it. I'll just let you listen to it because it was I enjoyed it a lot. Here's what I want to do today, Mike.
All right.
I found right at the beginning of the year, we're mid-January now. I don't know if it's proper to say resolution, but it's certainly something we can look ahead for this year. So I found a phrase that said this: wait a minute, gratitude turns what we have into enough. And I
Ah,
said, well, I like that. I like that. If you're
yeah.
gracious about things.
Huh.
So I immediately thought of the word contentment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Being
Yep.
content. And if you look up that word in Webster's, it basically says peaceful happiness. So
Mm-hmm.
let's start this way. What are your favorite contentment scriptures? And then give us I don't want to call them interpretation because you really don't have to interpret it. They're pretty self explanatory, but tell us what your favorite contentment scriptures are first and what they mean in practice at this point.
Well, obviously, when you talk about contentment, you have to go back to what Paul said concerning I've learned in whatever state I am to be content.
Yeah, that's the best one, in my opinion.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
obviously, I'm going to have to. I can go back to a week ago, Sunday night, and this was what I preached on. So I can go back there and bring out exactly what you want me to have. So, for instance, I try to, and I don't know that it is in every detail this way, but the way I like to describe those words, that word contentment and its counterpart, satisfaction. And so trying to say, are they exactly the same or not? Well, I think there's a way to understand the difference between them. And so it I think it makes a great point. So here's what I have found. I think satisfaction is a part of attitude or something that emphasizes the physical body. I'm satisfied. I've got enough sleep. I got enough food. I'm satisfied.
Makes sense?
But contentment emphasizes the person. And so even if I am not satisfied, I haven't reached all of my physical goals, I can still be content because as a person. And so that is the idea. Now, the word in the Greek language actually means self sufficient.
I looked that up, so
Yeah.
I'm on board.
Okay. Did you find that to be the case? Self sufficient?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if it was those exact words, but it
Right.
was the individual Greek words
That's
interpretation.
it.
Yeah.
That's it. And and the concept of that is not that I don't need anybody else. I don't need God.
Right.
I'm self-sufficient. What it means is wherever I am, I take what I am and who I am, and I can work with that at any moment. And so, in a real, I think, interesting way, satisfaction says, "I've had enough. Don't give me any more." Contentment says, "I've had a lot, but I want more of it." And have you ever been so full that you couldn't even look at food?
Oh yeah, every Thanksgiving.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, see, that's satisfaction. That's not contentment.
Right.
Because contentment would say, "Ooh, I can't wait to do this again." And so, I think that. So, when you talk about the verses, the word for contentment is used at least 4 times in Scripture.
Okay.
And so, those passages tell us about the things that contentment is a part of. So, 2 Corinthians 9, 6 through 8, when Paul was writing to the Corinthians about giving money to the people in the famine time,
Right.
the contentment word used there was about the fact that uh, you can be, while you're giving, is giving you contentment. Satisfaction would give you, you would think about getting. So satisfaction says, I want to get something. Contentment says, I want to give something. And the word is used there when he was trying to get those people to give to those who were in need.
Right.
The passage in 2 Corinthians 12, when Paul said, I have a thorn in the flesh and I want it to be gone. And God said, my grace is sufficient for you. That's the word contentment. And it means, to be content means that I have to be weak enough to use God's strength.
Good. Good.
But satisfaction says, I want to be strong enough on my own to overcome my weakness.
Gotcha.
Okay. The third passage where it's used is Philippians chapter 4. And there, Paul is using that passage where he said, I've learned in whatever state I am, in that to be content. Well, in that concept, contentment overlooks whatever bad is happening in my life, and I can still be okay. But satisfaction only looks at the problems in my life.
Gotcha.
Till they're fixed, I'm not satisfied.
That's good.
The final one is 1 Timothy 6, 6 through 10, and he talks to the rich about whether they are givers or not. And contentment concentrates on what money can't buy. And satisfaction's only concerned about what money can buy.
Right.
So that's the idea of contentment, the person versus the body, contentment versus satisfaction.
Okay, good, good. And I can't help but say this now that you've brought up satisfaction. My niece last night, I saw her wearing a Rolling Stones t-shirt. And I'm thinking, do you even know who the Rolling Stones are? And she said, not really.
No.
And I said, would it mean anything to you if I started singing, I can't get no satisfaction? And she said, no, but I have heard of that song. So I couldn't help but think about that when you say that. So let me say some very specific things.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll ask it in 3 parts. I'll ask all 3 parts. It's not as complicated as I made it.
Right.
From a financial standpoint, when do we know we should be financially content? If we become too content, are we being lazy? If we become too content, will it allow us to let people take advantage of us financially? So does contentment enter into those thoughts at all?
Oh, I definitely think that it is a general term that includes everything we do. So it certainly would include the financial. What you have just described is probably a misunderstanding of the word contentment or the word satisfaction, because contentment never is any kind of an anchor that holds us down. But in fact, pushes us forward. So that what we're doing is we're saying, take money, for instance. If I have what I can have to exist, does that mean that I'm going to quit working? Or does that mean that becomes the launching pad for doing more? See, satisfied says, don't want any more. Contentment says, I want more. And so, yes, I think it is possible that people could misunderstand the word contentment and think that if I want more money than I have, then I'm obviously not a contented person. Well, that's not true. Because on the one hand, the more I have, the more I can give.
True.
I can help other people. And so if that line of reasoning, if I stop, then I'm actually saying I don't want to help anybody anymore. So I think it's certainly
That's a good point.
the financial part. I think it definitely, so I guess contentment is something that should motivate us to continue what we're doing because it's giving us contentment.
Okay. All right. Let me ask it from this standpoint. We're going to have, I hate to, and I'm not, you know me, I don't discuss politics, and I'm not about to do that now. But
Right.
since if we're going to define contentment as peaceful happiness,
Yep.
how and should we show contentment with any decisions that have been made by the past president or any to be made by the future president?
Certainly. Certainly. We have to be content. That is the whole point. We have to, it's a part of maturity to learn to be content.
Yes.
A person who is not content financially never has enough money because they're looking to be satisfied. That's the difference. If you're looking to be content, then whatever you have, you can work with it. It's enough for you. You don't
Right.
growing, but it's enough. But if you're only looking to be satisfied, you never have enough. I don't care what it is. Friends, job, position, money, doesn't matter. So should we be content? We certainly should be content. In fact, it'll be much more important if things in the country go in a way that opposes God more and more.
Sure.
It certainly is going to be important for us to be content because that means I've had people in my office who are really upset about what's going on.
Sure.
And I don't blame them because
my best friends in St. Louis, you know who they are, would fall into that category.
Yeah. And
I mean, not in a negative way,
Right.
in a concerned way.
Well, sure. And we all are. But the question is, when things aren't good, does that mean my faith begins to waver? If so, then I'm much more interested in satisfaction than contentment. So I need to be content. And part of the reason that I preached what I did this morning was
Right.
God is the continuous standard that during all of these times, he is the Father. And no matter what is going on, he's still there.
Yes.
And so we need to be content with the fact that he is still there, even if things aren't the way we want them to be.
Good, good. By the way, speaking of this morning's service, that might be the first time I heard a song leader lead a song to the tune of another song.
Well, you know,
I'm not going to mention his name. What?
And it is the exact same words, and therefore
that's what it was. Okay, well, I'll cut him a break then. I'll cut him a break. Although he's funny, he just laughed at himself. So that's what I would do too. When we get persecutions as a Christian, does contentment enter into that at all?
Oh yeah, that's the only thing that gets you through it, I'm sure.
Right.
The persecution is an attempt on the part of somebody to affect your physical circumstance so much that you stop whatever they're trying to stop.
Right.
Okay. Contentment, they will never be able to do that.
Good. Good. Are you sure you didn't borrow this material from someone else? It's really good.
Well, I appreciate it, but it's just 40-something years of study.
Yes. You're content in what you do, aren't you?
I am. Absolutely, I am.
All right.
So I definitely think that persecution's involved. Yeah. If the Christians in that first century, Paul, that's what he was talking about. Whatever I'm in, I've learned to be content.
Right.
Being in the state of Kentucky, though, I don't want to be in another one, but.
Oh, that's
catch on to that, Greg, yet?
I had just made comments about how all your words were so good so far. Then you say something like that. All right. You're right. That does sound like something I would say. All right. I'm going to try my best to trick you. Okay.
Mm,
I'm going to forewarn you that that's what I'm going to try to do.
right,
Okay. The
right.
next word we're going to talk about
Hmm.
is contentious.
Yeah.
Now, how can we have two words so opposite each other come from the same root word?
Well, I say that,
You know I'm trying to trick you, don't you?
of course. I don't, I don't know. I'm going to trust you that you have looked at it to know
I
that it's
have.
the Greek word root, and I don't have any problem with that. So, but what I can imagine is that to be a content person is that I have this attitude that stirs me up in a positive direction. To have a contentious mindset is an attitude that stirs me up in a negative direction.
Okay.
So, uh,
It's easier than that. You want me to just let the cat out of the bag?
sure.
The root word for contentious, believe it or not, is actually contend, like
Uh, that's right.
contender, like somebody that's ready to fight all the time.
T and D instead of
Yes,
T
and
and
I would have
T.
thought the same. I didn't know that until I looked it up. So with
Oh,
that in mind,
yeah,
what
yeah.
what give us some verses that talk about being contentious, because we got plenty of them too.
Those who are contentious, I would say, I think it occurs in Romans chapter 1 when he lists at the end there a number of sins and he talks about fighting amongst themselves. That's the idea of being contentious. I think it's in the listing in some way of the works of the flesh in Galatians chapter 5,
Right.
19 to 21. He mentions uh, fighting. I think the whole book of First Corinthians talked about people who were at odds with each other. You need to be together and be united. I think he talks about it in specific ways. For instance, in Jude, he addresses the man who wants to have the preeminence among, or is that John, third John, the preeminence among them, and he kicks people out of the church because he thinks he's in charge. So I think anytime that you have fighting back and forth, that's contentiousness.
Right. Do you think being contentious is a personality trait if we're not careful?
Oh, I
Or
think
is
so.
it like a one time, is it like a here and there type thing?
Well, it depends probably on how much it happens because, for instance, you probably right now, just like anybody who is watching this, could probably right now think of a person. When you think of them and see their face and hear their voice, you think that they're angry.
Right.
That's just how they come across. They're
We
just,
used to call it having a chip on your shoulder.
that's it, the chip.
Right.
That's exactly right. And so, yes, but none of us is immune to periodic contentious time. Some get a reputation for it. Others have the opposite reputation. And when it happens, people are shocked. So I think it is a personality trait for some. That for others, it's simply a momentary thing that they're able to handle.
I'm glad you said that because it makes me think of the ones that do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You tend to ignore it after
Yep,
a
you
while.
do. That's
Whereas
right.
if somebody's being contentious that hardly ever is,
Uh,
it's more meaningful. I mean, just like you said, it's more meaningful in what they're doing. Is contentiousness always a sin?
well, obviously not, because Paul told Timothy, 1 Timothy 6, to contend earnestly for the faith.
Yes, that's what I was. That was going to be my point. Is
Yeah,
if we go straight to the
that's
root
right.
word, being a contender is not evil.
Nope, not at
Uh,
all.
we want to, you know, there's plenty of scriptural references about continuing the race. I mean, that's like being a contender. Go ahead. You look like you
Well,
had a thought.
I think the suffix ious is a suffix that attaches a state of being to that word. It's not just an action, it now becomes a state of being.
I actually looked it up before the show and forgot to write it down. It's a suffix forming adjectives that have the general sense of possessing, full
Yep,
of,
that's
that
right.
type of thing. So
Yeah.
covetous,
Right.
glorious, nervous, and wondrous are the 4 words that they mention in that definition. So
Yeah, and it becomes, those things become the reputation or the state, or this is who you are. So to contend is to have a momentary situation. To be contentious is to possess the reputation of this is who you are.
does that ever happen inside the church? I'm not talking about out in public when we're
I
out in
know,
public with people. Does
right?
it ever happen inside the church? In fact, I'll
Oh,
go back. One of the things I had written down about contentment is we're not always going to agree with every decision that's made in the church, but we should be content. And unless we think there's a scriptural issue, we
sure,
should be
sure.
content in the decision that was made and support it. On
That's
the
it.
flip side, then, you know, contentment to me is it's almost like the opposite of being contentious. We
Mm,
want to argue all the time on one
right,
side.
right.
We really want to understand and make it work on the other side. So what are some situations that happen in the church that we often find, I won't say ourselves, but individuals being contentious when they really should not, or I was going to say when they really should not be, but that's probably all of the time. But when do we find out, what's some situations where we can find ourselves being contentious? Let me use your example.
Mhm.
When do we sometimes find in ourselves being contentious when nobody would really call us a contentious person?
Mhm. It has to do with our individual likes and dislikes and how firmly we're going to hold to them. So, some of the worst contentious moments in churches probably have to do with the hiring and firing of paid people,
That's a good point. I'd go
so
along with that.
preachers, youth ministers, whatever. And whether they're wanted or not wanted, or wanted and then they're fired. I mean, it doesn't, those create some very difficult times. I think that we just went through one. I think there were some battles
Right.
over masks, over ways to social distance, over whether
That's a good point.
or not open. So those are the battles. And to be honest with you, biggest battles in a church setting that I've ever seen in my entire life are the battles that nobody ever sees.
That's a
Elders,
good point. Yes.
elders meetings.
Yes.
They fight, and that's a good thing.
I agree. I agree.
Come to blows, they don't cuss and swear, but they absolutely say, I don't agree with that. And I do, but, and you should. I mean, they go, but when they leave, and this has been true for every elder meeting I've ever been a part of, when they leave, that's a united front, and there is the way. But I tell you, in a situation like that, if they did not contend with each other,
Yes. Yes.
you would not get as wise a decision if you were just letting one person like me make the decision.
Right. Right. The reason it looked like I wasn't distracted, but I was trying
No.
to find a quote and I can't find it exactly. So I'll just paraphrase it. You
Mhm.
mentioned the mask. I had a meeting in the school I work for this week, and it was in the library. And he had put up a sign that it was a quote that said something to this effect: I wear a mask not for myself, but for your protection,
Mhm.
which is really what we're saying during this COVID environment. But that was actually a quote from Batman in The Dark Knight. So,
Oh
so it's so
yeah.
ironic that you could just throw that quote right in the middle of what we're
Yeah,
going through right now. And man, it's hard to believe this has almost been a year now. It's been,
I know.
it kind of started in February, everything shut down in March, and here we are in the following January. So
Right,
let's,
right.
I think we'll have a better year this year. We'll
Oh,
see
I
how
sure
things
hope so.
go.
I sure hope so.
All right, man, close us out with some profound thoughts, even more
Oh man.
profound than you've already shared.
Okay. The profound thought I have is I hope that everybody can understand that an abundant life comes not from concentrating on the life physically that we're living.
Good, good. That's a good one. All
That's a
right,
good one.
guys, that's it for us this week. We'll see you next week on the Church Debater and Preacher Mike. Say goodbye, Mike.
Goodbye, Mike.